With King's Court just around the corner, competitive players are excited to get their hands on Utopic Draco Future, the fancy new Xyz monster, and cheaper copies of Lightning Storm, or if you're me, just a cheaper Dolka will do. On the more casual side of things, players have been promised that the support in this set will finally make Egyptian gods playable, with cards that give you 3 tribute materials, and then others that actually search and summon the Egyptian gods. People are wondering if you can actually finally play an Egyptian god deck. To see how true that is, first we need to wonder what the requirements for a god deck working would be. I'd say it needs 2 things. First of all, you need to be able to get your god of choice out consistently, and second of all, it would actually need to work as a boss monster. So let's see if the support actually works at doing either of those things. The god we're going to focus on is Slifer the Sky Dragon. It's the one that the support works best for, since it focuses on adding cards to your hand and searching a monster with question mark attack. Slifer benefits from both of those things more than Obelisk or Ra, so that's the god we're going to do. And it has an effect where it reduces the opponent's monsters by 2000 attack when they're summoned, and destroys them if it reduces them to 0. Out of the new cards, the most important is probably Joker's Straight. Ha, no he's not. It works by discarding a card to then summon Queen's Knight from your deck, and then it adds King's Knight to your hand, and normal summons it too. Since it normal summoned the King's Knight effect allows you to summon Jack's Knight from your deck, which gives you 3 monsters for a tribute summon without actually using your real normal summon. So if you happen to have Slifer in your hand, you would be able to just summon it there and then. Usually you won't have Slifer though, which is where the second piece of support comes into play. Thunderspeed Summon basically needs you to have all 3 of the knights on the field to search and then summon Slifer as a quick effect. This means that you can also summon Slifer on your opponent's turn if that's useful, and it doesn't matter if you've already used your normal summon or not. Being able to search Slifer is invaluable since usually most Egyptian god decks would just require you to hard draw it, and this finally gets around that. However, relying on drawing either of those 2 cards is far too luck based. That's why you have Joker's Wild. He sure is. This card basically sends either Joker's Straight or Thunderspeed Summon to the graveyard to copy their effects, essentially acting as 3 extra copies of whichever one you needed. That makes the deck a lot more consistent. And it doesn't matter too much that it's a trap, since you can just use it for Thunderspeed Summon on your opponent's turn before they've normal summon anything anyway. The final piece of support is Joker's Knight. It works by sending one of the knights to the graveyard to summon itself and copy their name. Now the main application for that is to send a Queen's Knight to the graveyard to copy its name, and then to normal summon a King's Knight that you had in your hand. That'll then summon Jack's Knight, and then you'll have all 3 pieces ready for Thunderspeed Summon's effect to work. Joker's Straight, Joker's Knight, and Joker's Wild all also have the effect that they can shuffle back one of your 3 knights from the graveyard to your deck to add themselves back to your hand. This is of course really useful since Slifer gains 1000 attack for every card in your hand, so it helps make your Slifer harder to beat over by battle. But how well does it work in practice? From playtesting it, I noticed that it is actually fairly consistent at getting Slifer out. Having both Joker's Wild and 3 copies of Joker's Straight and Thunderspeed Summon means you'll probably have a way to get to whichever one you're missing. So usually by your opponent's draw phase, you will have enough stuff to be able to make Slifer the Sky Dragon before they can normal summon. This is important since you can't normal summon in defense mode obviously, and most normal summons do have less than 2000 attack, so that's a situation where Slifer's Floodgate could be useful. However, as you can see, there's also many situations where you can either just summon in defense mode, or summon a monster with more than 2000 attack. And in those situations, all Slifer's really doing is protecting itself from battle. Thanks to the cards recycling themselves though, you can even get out multiple Slifers. And that's not too bad since Slifer's effect does actually stack, meaning they'd need 4000 attack to survive the double Floodgate effect. The constant recycling makes Slifer fairly strong, but then you encounter the other problem with the deck. While you can get out a lot of monsters, Slifer has no protection. Since I'm fighting a Blue Eyes player here, I kind of thought that they would be the kind of person to play a Mirror Force, so I put one of my monsters in defense mode. It turns out I was right, and it really reveals that with no protection at all, even something like a Mirror Force can just stop your entire deck if you're not prepared for it. Slifer has no protection besides just destroying something before it can do anything, so if your opponent has any spells or trap cards that can destroy Slifer, or a monster with 2000 or more attack, or that can just be summoned in defense mode, with any kind of removal effect, Slifer will just die. It can win against very slow, very casual decks like the one I just fought, but anything else will just have a way to deal with Slifer. Here's the version of the deck that I think works the best. You run 2 Jack's Knight and Queen's Knight, but 3 King's Knight, since if you can use Unexpected Die to get out a Queen's Knight, then King's Knight effect will actually go up to summon Jack's Knight. You then play 2 Slifer, since 3 can be a bit bricky, and 3 Jaker's Knight, because again, copying Queen's Knight effect can come into play, and it's a good discard outlet for Jaker's Straight. Then play Extravagance and Prosperity, since you really want to find Jaker's Straight or Jaker's Wild as soon as possible, and it also helps get your quick effect spells to actually summon Slifer. Your extra deck really doesn't matter at all, so it's fine to just banish them for these. Then of course you play 3 of each of the new support cards, since they're what actually makes the deck run, and then 3 Ash Blossom to try and slow down your opponent a bit. Cyframe Gamma is also quite useful, since you can usually just activate Jaker's Straight immediately at the start of your turn when you don't control any monsters, and it can help make that effect actually go off, and it even gets out a few extra materials. The 40th card can be something like a Monster Reborn, or an extra pot of Extravagance, or even a Rare Sphere Mode if you want to try and tribute your opponent's monsters, since that also is a level 10 monster with question mark attack that isn't Dark type. The extra deck is just generally useful monsters, but you don't really make anything too often with it. Instead, they're just here to be banished with the pots to draw more cards. So to answer whether this deck works as an actual Slifer deck, the answer is that it does get out Slifer very often, very consistently. But as to whether that's enough for a deck or not, the truth is Slifer isn't actually that powerful. Losing to any kind of removal, and even kind of just losing to defense mode monsters. Nowadays, most decks don't just immediately lose if their normal summon is destroyed, and that's your situation where your floodgate's most likely to actually apply. If they can extend past that, they'll most likely be able to just summon monsters in defense position, until they can make an extra deck monster with more than 2000 attack, which could then remove Slifer. If you're playing in a mostly casual setting, or against very slow decks without many forms of removal, it can work then. Then again, most things can work in that situation. But if you're looking for a competitive deck, they're still not there yet. As far as competitive viability goes, you might just want to pick up 3 Joker's Knights, since it might end up as a useful extender in warrior decks. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, and also subscribe. You can also check the links down below for stuff like my Twitter or my Twitch account. Other than that, just have fun.